Now, when RNI launched in 1970, it of course initially broadcast in English and German. The English service remained throughout the entire trials and tribulations of the station, and so now we look back at the men who broadcast in English from RNI with your moderator, former Voice of Peace DJ, Robbie Owen.
Hello. My claim to fame is simply that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool RNI anorak. I was mid-teens when this station was on the air, and I followed every bombing, every anchor chain break, and all the comings and goings. Even the name changes for Arnold Layne were of great interest to me every day. So it's an honor to be asked to chair this panel again. What I'm going to do is, because we've got lots of people to talk to, is we're going to do this in 2 stages. There'll be a changeover partway through, so you get the chance to see everybody. Can I ask you to keep these doors closed so that we don't make too much noise getting in from outside? And the team, by the way, are trying to turn up the volume so people at the back can hear more clearly. So can I ask everyone on the panel to love their microphones?
Hello.
Okay. So let's run down the line and see who's behind the microphones, because, of course, we all know what these people used to sound like, and guess what? They still sound the same. Unfortunately, they don't quite look the same as my...
How bloody dare you?
And so, starting on my left, please introduce yourselves.
My name's Michael Lindsay, and I was on RNI for about 3 months. And talking about recognising people, my wife and I met at a commercial radio station in the UK, which had a reunion, and people thought my wife had remarried. So people didn't even recognise me that I'd worked with for a long time. I recently discovered that Robbie was moderating the session, and I said to Andy Archer, who on earth is Robbie Owen? And he said, he knows more about you than you know yourself. So
well, I'm going to try and do that. And when I said love the microphone, obviously, brief introductions, please, everyone. And next to Michael is...
Yes, well, I'm Peter Chicago, and... Thank you very much for the applause. Radio North Sea was my first experience of offshore radio.
And women.
And I joined it soon after it started broadcasting, and on and off I sort of continued both up until the closed down when it first came on the air, and then I made a brief reappearance on the station when it came back on the air later. Anyway, that's me, Peter Chicago.
Welcome, Peter. And next to Peter?
Yes, my name's Roger Kent. In fact, you might remember the captain mentioned the cornflakes. That was me, I'm afraid.
And you had your own request hour.
Yes, I had the Roger Kent hit back hour, wasn't it? From memory, long time ago. I was on the station from February 74 right through to close down, and had the honour to be the first English DJ to do the English close down show. So something quite to be remembered, very memorable. Had a great time on RNI, loved it. It was one of the best experiences of my whole life, actually.
Okay, Roger. Thank you. And another Roger.
I suppose I have to say hi, hello, how are you? This is the thinner record spinner, Roger Twiggy Day.
And
I tell you what, hang on a minute. The Dutch gin is weaker than it used to be.
Of course.
Bloody awful, there's nothing in it.
We need to keep you sober for this session at least. And next to Roger Day, we find...
I am Werner Hartwig, and I worked for the RNI World Service on the program which was hosted by AJ Barons. And we did this for about 2 years, and we enjoyed that time. But we worked mainly from home, so we didn't work on the ship actually.
And is that your brother next to you?
Yeah, that is my brother, yes.
Hello, Peter Hartwig. Willkommen.
Yeah, that's right. My name is Peter Hartwig. Well, we did this program together, my brother Werner and I, mainly from home. We had a small studio, very tiny studio, becoming bigger and bigger each year. And some month ago, we had to break it up because we had to sell the house. And we enjoyed it very much doing this program. It was only once per month, and for the rest it was in English and in French. doing a DX program. I wonder if anybody knows.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about that.
What a DX? Okay, we do it later.
I think most of the people in this room listen to North Sea goes DX. And hiding on the end behind
Hiding
you.
on the end,
Hello.
Is someone who was a dreadful, appalling broadcaster when I joined Radio North Sea, because I only had club experience, and I ended up coming out to the boat by pestering people like Ed Marino and Larry Tremaine, the geezer with the heater. So thanks to those two, I got onto the ship, because I'd previously gone to the BBC or been dragged to the BBC, and the BBC turned around and said, "Dave, got a great voice. Now go and get a personality." So I went to the only station that was available outside of Radio Luxembourg that I could get onto, and that was, of course, RNI. And I was actually, I don't know whether the right word is privileged enough to be the guy that shut down when we got jammed and we upped anchored and went to anchor down the road from Veronica off the coast, the north of Holland, Scheveningen, which I can never pronounce properly, but I made the announcement, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now closing down on."
So, Dave, you're obviously still on training, because you've done something which is a real talent. You've managed to speak for a minute without actually telling everybody your name.
Well, I thought that was the point of these ear badges. Mind you, a lot of people,
I can't read your badge from here. And your name is?
Dave Gregory.
Dave Gregory, welcome. Let's have clip number... I need to put my glasses on. Clip number 38, please, Patrick.
What good are friends if you never call on them? Your best friend station. The chairman of the board of the Happiness Corporation. Charge!
This is Radio North Sea International, AM and FM. Radio.
Oh, what wonderful things to hear again. And I tell you what, to put us in the right flavour, I think we should look at the origins, with the start of the station. And I know he was a very young programme controller. Roger, you were in right at the beginning. Where did this big project get its idea from?
With a lot of hair, of course, as you've seen in the pictures there, right down to here, which means I got stopped at customs. It was easier getting through this time, I'll tell you, than it was in those days. For those who don't know, I used to be on Caroline South before that. And in the interim, 1969, there have been a lot of projects. People are always phoning me up saying, "We've got another radio station on a ship." And after about 10 of these, I got a bit fed up with it, because it never happened. And I just treated them as a joke. And then I saw an advert in the NME, I think it might have been, or might have been Record Mirror. It said, English disc jockeys needed for international radio station. I thought, all right, give it a go. And I sent off a tape. And the next thing I know, I get a phone call from either Maestro or Bollier, I don't remember which one. And they said, "Yeah, we're starting a ship off Holland." I thought, yeah, I'm the Pope, bugger off, basically. And no, it's true. I was very cool about it, because I'd had so many, false claims. And they said, "No, we really have a boat." Okay, fair enough. I said, "Look, if you pay for my airfare to come to Holland," I thought at least to get a day out of it, "I'll come across and have a look." And I came to the Grand Hotel in Scheveningen, which isn't there now, of course. Met them, and they were talking about their plans, and it sounded good, but I still didn't believe them. I thought I was on candid camera or something, and I was going to reveal it. And they said, "We'll see you at for the tender in the morning." I thought, okay, fine, that's a good start. We went to and there was the Mebo there, which Mebo 2, they call it, I forget now, but anyway, it's going to be the original station, but they wanted something bigger. and that was about as big as the Mi Amigo anyway. It was a misty day, and I remember we sailed past Veronica, which is great because I'd listened to Veronica for many years. Wonderful station, Radio Veronica, by the way, isn't it? Wasn't it? Isn't it? Absolutely. I don't know. Has it been ruined yet, or is it just as good? No comment on that then. But we sailed past Veronica, and then we sailed past the Rem Island. I thought, that's interesting. At least if I've seen these two, if I haven't anything else. And out of the mist came this thing painted in psychedelic colours with a huge aerial. And I can't say what I said here, but to paraphrase it, I said, "Oh, crikey, these silly sods have done it." And I said, "Yeah, that's true." And I thought, yeah, right, okay. And we got on board and had a look, and they were building the studios and everything, and they were ready to go on test transmissions. And I recorded a little thing saying, you're listening to the new station, Radio North Sea International, the sound of young Europe. I think it's me that invented that phrase, by the way. I left that on there and then came home to sort of cut my ties with England, all the disco contacts I had. And said to my wife Jenny, I said, "I'm afraid I'm going off to sea again." She didn't actually say much. She's probably quite glad. I remember I got phone calls at first from people saying, because they'd started 10 transmissions with my voice on there, and people were phoning up saying, "Oh, we've heard you on the new station." I said, "Oh, I couldn't possibly get involved with another pirate. I've had enough of that." They said, "No, it's you." I said, "I don't think so. It's just somebody that sounds like me." As
if somebody could.
I don't know. Nobody's that bad.
Dave.
So I just that was it. I was on the ship and we were ready to go. Me and Johnny Scott.
Roger,
history. Dave. What were your first impressions when you arrived on the Mebo?
Well, I was waiting for Roger to kind of do a little roll call of people who were out there at that time, because you actually left when I arrived, Roger, didn't you? More or less at the same time. But you were on with, of course, the wonderful Duncan Wells, who is still with us, I think.
Duncan Johnson, yeah.
Just Duncan Johnson, sorry, not Duncan Wells.
I was sacked by Larry Tremaine, of course, before you came.
The geezer with the heater.
Yeah, the bastard sacked me.
He
sacked a lot of people.
He was supposed to be here, but
he has apologised since, said it was a great mistake, and of course it was.
Well, I never used to understand, Rog.
Dave, answer the question. What were your first impressions when you arrived on them?
My first impressions were, wow, the psychedelic shack. When I saw the boat, I was the only time I was ill, physically sick, coming out. All the time I was on the Mebo was actually when we were anchored off the Essex coast still. And we flew out on this old Bristol air freighter from Southend Airport, and went out to Schiphol, and then had to take the tender back to Holland. And that was the only time I was physically sick. And I must tell you this: I had no idea. I thought, here we are, we're going to be radio stars, and we're on this tender. We're going out to the boat. I was going to take over Andy's show for a couple of weeks while he took some shore leave. That was my first mission. But anyway, I was, ill in a corner somewhere. And I thought, well, I'm a DJ, I'm a radio star now. I mean, somebody's bound to clear this mess up. And I disappeared off. The next morning, when we got to the boat, I've been sent to Coventry, which is, I don't know whether you know that expression, there's, everybody giving you blank looks, nobody's talking to you, glaring at you. And somebody then, said, one of the crew said, "Dave, there's a mop and a bucket over there." And that was my induction into life.
Clear up your
on offshore radio, exactly. And it was great. It was a reality check. And after that, I got the golden handshake from Andy Archer. "Hello, darling. Come and sit on my knee. We'll talk about the first thing that comes up." Yes,
the old ones are the best. Let's bring. I want to bring Peter Chicago in here, and Peter. This station was incredibly well fitted out and equipped. Again, what were your impressions when you first arrived on the Mebo 2 and you saw the money that had been spent?
It looked marvellous. It was certainly a very spectacular looking ship. But for those that actually got to live on board, you soon discovered that there were sort of inherent problems. It looked very good on the publicity photographs. But when you were living on the ship, you noticed the problems, which there was a big circular wash bowl in the washroom. Lots of taps around it, big centerpiece.
Yeah, it looked wonderful in
Looked
photos.
wonderful in the photographs. But when you turned the tap on, the water would splash straight out of the bowl all over your trousers at a very embarrassing point, usually. The showers were at the end of the washroom and just with hanging curtains. And again, it left a nice wide open space. But in rough weather, when the ship would really move a lot, and you were covered in soap, and usually soap in the eyes, you could be thrown all the way out of the shower and all the way across the washroom. And about half the way across the room, there was a tap jutting out of the wall. And on one occasion, not only was I thrown right out of the shower, but I impaled myself on the tap and used some very descriptive language to sum up my thoughts. There were other things. The cabins were comfortable, but they're all below decks, and there was no daylight, and a little bit depressing, really. And at times when the ship was moving a lot in bad weather, it could be positively frightening, because I had a towel hanging up on the side of my cupboard, and the ship would roll over, and the towel, of course, would swing out. But the ship would sometimes take quite a long time to recover and come back. And you could see the towel hanging out at the angle. And on more than one occasion, there was the thought going through your head, is it time to jump out of this bed and sort of run for the deck? Well, it never happened, but it did feel sometimes like it could do.
Thanks, Peter. Let's bring Peter and Werner in here. Talk a little bit about the World Service, and you work with AJ Behrens, who I'm not sure that AJ is with us anymore, but that program, I'm sure most people here used to listen Sunday mornings to North Sea Goes DX, and the World Service was, I think, a very enjoyable day. So tell us about your involvement in that.
Well, we had a call the other day. AJ Behrens asked if we could provide the German part of the World Service, and we just had nothing. So in a hurry, we had to provide the technical things to get a program going, and well, it was quite an adventure to get that, but we managed to get it going, and well, then we were very lucky that things went so well as it did.
We went to Scheveningen regularly with our good friend Theo Denker, the photographer. I think many of you will know. He is not here today, and I don't know how many times we went from northern Germany to Scheveningen. Even we went via very small roads, and it lasted for hours and hours before we went there, staying in a small hotel. And every time with the pleasure boats, we went to the ship, and sometimes we went on the ship. And the program itself, my brother told it already. The program itself, we did it in our becoming studio. It just emerged.
And were you getting a good response from German-speaking listeners?
We got very much cards and letters, because the means of communication were others than today. We got from all over Germany, because the shortwave could be listened or reached quite far. And we got much mail from the former GDR.
Okay, from behind the Iron Curtain you were getting.
Yeah, sure.
The eastern part.
Yeah, and it took us quite a long time to answer every letter, and we even couldn't manage to answer every letter we got from them.
That's a dimension, actually, of RNI you don't hear about very often. I remember I was selling tapes around that time, and I sometimes used to get orders from Czechoslovakia and places like that. And it was always very difficult changing the currency, and it usually ended up with a few pennies at the end. Let's have a clip of the World Service. Clip 18, Patrick.
Marvelous band there from San Francisco in the west of America, of course, and it's a beautiful day from their first LP, and songs which I love so much, like White Bird and A Hot Summer Day, which I played you there, and Wasted Union Blues, which you've just heard. And in fact, in a moment we'll have some more from It's a Beautiful Day here on RNI's World Service, Christmas Day, especially to you. We say a Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year. We're having a good time out here at this Christmas, and we do hope you are as well, because it's all having fun on Christmas Day and around the whole year as well. One day shouldn't be so different. We can all have fun together. Really, 364 or maybe 65 days of the year.
Now, in fact, that clip was somebody we're going to hear from in a moment, which is Robb Eden, who's sitting down at the front here. We need to make some space because we've got so many people on the panel. We need to do a little changeover. So, big thank you to Radioday, to Peter and Werner, and to Dave Gregory. I wondered if you could make some space so we can bring up 3 more from our guests. You want to make a comment, Roger? Of course you do.
I might be on later, but can I just say thank you very much to a lot of people in this room who still support me after all these years. You don't know how much I appreciate the support you've given me during troubled times, and I thank you very much for that. So thanks very much.
So let's have a round of applause.
Well done, Rog. Can I just mention very quickly just that some of the original members who I was privileged to work with, some of them are no longer with us, and that was Chris Carey, Spangles Muldoon, Carl the Weirbeard Mitchell, who was a great broadcaster, and Andy Archer, who I believe is somewhere in the audience today. I can't see him at the moment, but I hope he's going to be with us and telling you some great stories later on.
Okay,
thank you for
thanks,
coming.
Dave. All right, let's welcome some extra guests here. Just sitting down with his, he's got a great suntan. It's a pleasure to introduce Paul May. Can we welcome Paul May?
Good afternoon. Testing. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here.
Arnold Layne, otherwise known as Greg Bantz, or at one time known as Roger Scott. Arnold Layne, welcome. And just joined us at the end is Robb Eden, who we just heard on the World Service. Hello, Rob.
Yeah, amazing to hear that again. Seems ages ago. There was mention about AJ Burns. In fact, he is poorly, which is the reason he couldn't be here today. But obviously, AJ was the inspiration behind the World Service and a truly magnificent supporter of Radio North Sea.
And joining us on the end is the wonderful Graham Gill, whose book I can heartily recommend. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you very much, Robin.
Now, I want to ask Michael Lindsay about the 29th of August 1970. I can remember the date because it was my sister's birthday, and we just thought, let's check what's going on RNI, just see that they're all right. And there were very, very animated announcements going on about a group of people who were threatening to cut the anchor chain and tow the ship in, and they had a water cannon, apparently. Michael, do you remember this event?
I remember the event, but I can't remember or vouch for the fact they had a water cannon.
Well, somebody called Case Mundes apparently was one of the people.
We were rushing up and down stairs from the deck, back down the small staircase into the little on-air studio, and there was, I think, myself, Carl Mitchell, and Spangles Muldoon mainly getting involved in what was going on, and Spangles was the one, we're ready for a fight, you come and get us and we'll sort you out. But it was very scary. I mean, thinking back to what happened in the 3 months or so that I was with North Sea, we had numerous frequency changes, which the presenters got involved with doing the mathematical calculations for Peter Chicago. We moved the British coast back to the Dutch coast. We had a Case Mundes. It just seemed that not a week went by without something quite dramatic happening, but it was quite frightening at the time.
And then the dramatic close down in September.
Yes.
Which took everybody by surprise.
But in some ways you think, well, thankfully I wasn't there later when things like the bomb were thrown on board.
Yes, the adventures certainly
thankful for small mercies.
Continued. Let's have a little clip here. Patrick, can we have number 21?
Who is Arnold Layne? Well, if you were a Pink Floyd fan, then you would think he's a figment of their imagination. However, if you studied geography, you'd find Arnold Layne without a Y in quite a few towns. But now the secret is out. Arnold Layne, with a Y, is a disc jockey who plays great music on RNI.
And with his rich tones, yes, welcome, Arnold Layne. You've never lived down that name change. Now, I remember the trailer that mentioned that that Roger Scott was joining the station, and I think this was only broadcast for a couple of days, and then the name suddenly changed.
Yes, you're so right, because at the time I was still thinking there might be something for me to do at the BBC, even though this was 1972. I still was holding some hopes. And a friend of mine, Rodney Collins, if he's not here today, I'll say the infamous Rodney Collins, said, oh, no, you'll have to change your name, because even if you get a chance in 2 or 3 years' time, the BBC, probably Radio 1, something like that, they won't have you if you use the name Roger Scott on this radio. So I was all of 23 at the time, and I'd done offshore radio in the mid and late 60s, and I thought to go back to offshore radio at the age of 23 in 1972 was a bit absurd, ridiculous. And so I thought, well, what sort of name shall I choose? I'll use a really absurd and ridiculous name. Arnold Layne came to mind. I wasn't too bothered at the time about the lyrics of the song, which, if you do know the song by Pink Floyd, you'll know it's somewhat questionable in terms of
Yes, he stole women's underwear from
Yes,
washing
the
lines
predilections of Arnold Layne were not particularly mine. I've since come to appreciate that sort of thing, but no, I'm joking. So I arrived on board, and Paul, I think, said, "Hi, Rog," and I said, "No, it's Arnold." And I don't think Paul, who was the program controller at the time.
I actually hired you to come out.
Yes, Paul hired me to. Yes, I thought I didn't just get there. And that's a reminder. And yeah, Paul hired me, thinking Roger Scott was good. And it was a bit of a surprise when I turned up and said, "No, I'm going to be Arnold Layne." You thought it was a bit odd, didn't you?
Well, that's the promos we were putting out for Roger Scott.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. So
I didn't know what you were
Paul,
gonna call yourself.
you were in charge of this motley crew from
A good motley
from a
crew.
programming
They were
point
good
of
load.
view. Now, I think you had a background in radio and
Well,
stateside.
I'd worked in American radio.
So
before
what
then.
was it like arriving to try and
Well,
knock
I
these
always-
people into shape on the Mebo
I mean,
2?
I grew up with Caroline in London, and that's what prompted me to get into offshore radio or into radio itself. So I went back to the States and worked over there. Then I saw an advert for RNI, and I just came over, and I came to Hilversum, and I think most of the old jocks were there. I know. So I asked if I could go out and see the vessel, and they said yes. And that afternoon they left early, and there was Vic Pelli, who was the German program director. He said, "Well, I must get to the boat." So I had a rental car, and I took him down to Skevenham, and he said, "You come with me." And we got out there, and Mel Bowden, or Mark Stewart, said, "I need my shore leave." And Victor says, "You stay and relieve him." I said, "I can't stay." I said, "I got a rental car sitting on the quay." So he said, "Well, you come back next week." And that's when Mel turned around, or Mark Stewart turned around and said, "No, I'll be relieved next week." I came back the next week, and Victor, he said, "You're going to be my program director." I think a week later I met with Robb, and Robb's ideas and everyone's ideas. We met at a good sound going in RNI.
And how did you feel about the response you got? Because summer of '71 was, it seemed to be a special time at the station.
It was
both,
a heavy,
both on air
heavy
and
summer of
for
the
listeners.
70s. No, it was good. That was terrific. We all worked hard on the station sound.
So just joined us at the end, I can see, is Vic Pelli, the station manager from that time. Welcome, Vic. Vic, I want to ask you about one of the early problems that the station had. I mean, it had many, many challenges, including being jammed by the British government. How did you feel about that, and what was your reaction when you realised that the entire British government had decided to try and blot out your signal in 1970?
Can I come back to this later? I first want to apologise because Edwin Bollier and Edwin, they wanted to come. And Erwin Meister, he's now back from Singapore, and he's living now again in Switzerland.
Yeah, they've been promising to come and talk to us for some time.
Yeah. You know, the problem is Edwin, he's still heavily involved in this whole Lockerbie case.
Okay. Can you try the other microphone? We're not hearing you so clearly there, Vic. I want to ask you about this jamming, because we've only got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So tell, what was it like to have you're the station manager, and the British government have decided, no, we're not having this?
You know, the problem is the only thing we could do is change frequencies. You know, there was nothing to do against them. Because we couldn't jam their signals. And yeah.
Did you have informal contacts? You know, with their channels?
No. The only time we had formal contacts when we jammed one of their security channels. This was too dangerous, and we had direct contact with them.
And if you had your time again there, I mean, do you think it was early mistakes that led to that jamming? Because going on 186 meters was perhaps asking for trouble.
We had our experts, you know, and Edwin and also the engineers, they always recommended what to do. Right. I mean, you can maybe ask Peter Chicago. He knows actually more about this.
You must have felt very relieved then when you returned back to England and you hesitated to see whether the jamming would... Oh, you moved back to Holland rather
sure.
To see whether...
I mean, this was the main idea, to come to Holland, because the market was here. We made very little money in England.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And we had to sort of contact the English record company, but they were not allowed to pay us. So what we did, we made the contact with the Swiss record companies, and they had to talk back to them, and so we made some money out of this. Now, we had a lot of reggae companies. They wanted to pay tremendous sums, but we wouldn't take the records because it would spoil the program.
Yeah. Let's have a quick word with Robb Eden. Last time I saw you, Robb, you were unloading records actually from the boot of your car outside Jacques Vrolijk's cafe in Scheveningen. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that seemed to be a regular thing for me. In fact, I think Roger was talking about the customs. I used to be stopped. Well, I was on first name terms with them, and they always knew that I would throw them a few freebie records to get back into Holland. Except for one very misunderstanding with one chap who thought that I was bringing the records in to sell in Holland, and he couldn't quite understand why I had these thousands of records. But the thing is, Vic mentioned about the reggae artists. You know, I had a lot of dealings with the record companies in the UK. And they were all very supportive of the radio station. They all their acts were helped by the radio station. And once the whole station had built around the Dutch station and then the English service, it was amazing the support that they gave us, not only financial terms, but also in providing us with the product, which is the most important thing for us as a radio station. Yeah. It was having the product to play. We were in a very lucky position where we had records that were paid for to play. They were actually superb records, like Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells and those type of acts, that type of product.
Yeah,
so we became to a position where we could turn down some of the rubbish that was put forward.
That was innovative
and it helped us create the sound that Paul was talking about. Yeah. We did have a very good sound.
Let's grab a quick word with Graham, who's sat next to you. Welcome, Graham Gill.
Hi there, Robin.
Graham, you've been on many different offshore stations. How would you characterise RNI amongst all the different places that you worked?
Well, I think each of the radio stations had their own, you might say, way of going about things, and their own environment and their own formats. As for the stations I worked on, I think for most of them, for me coming from Australia, it was something new. I'd been 14 years in radio there before that. And I enjoyed very much my time with the offshore stations. Each station, to me as a foreigner living over here, gave to me a new way of thinking how radio was going. And I think if I were to say which was my favorite radio station, it's a difficult thing. I spent a short time with Britain Radio, Radio England. That was because the station more or less was eventually about to change into Radio Dolphin and Radio 355. It was a good time there, but not for me, I think, the happiest time. Radio 390, that was for me very, very good, very well organized, and it was a bit more like Australian radio was, where you didn't have to so much become the swinging DJ, but more or less the radio announcer. My time on Radio Caroline was also great, with a great bunch of colleagues. I was in the last, or almost the last, class of DJs during that time, because there were many before me, like Roger over there, or Robbie Dale, Johnny Walker, etc. I think if I were to say which was my favourite radio station, where I felt very much at ease and at home, would be Radio North Sea.
It's nice to hear. Okay, I just want a few seconds from each of you on the thought. What do you think is of lasting achievement? What was the lasting impact of Radio North Sea International? So you've got a moment to think. I'm going to spring that on Michael, Lindsay, and then we'll go down the line and we'll have to wrap up this panel. So, Michael, what do you think the lasting impact of Radio North Sea International was?
When you said you were going to give people time to think, I thought, well, maybe it'll be starting at that end rather than this end. I don't know, really. It's like all the pirate stations had their own character and their own individuality. And one of the constant themes of speaking to people here today is that individuality and uniqueness has gone from radio today. And everybody, I think, regrets it. That's why a lot of people are here today. I mean, Roger...
that's a good thought. Uniqueness. Okay. So, Arnold.
Probably the fact that it was billed as the sound of young Europe. There are two things there. It will be remembered as a station that sounded young and enthusiastic, and it was a station that actually somehow projected the idea of a unified and a young, hopeful, progressive Europe. So I wouldn't underplay that side of it.
Great. And Roger Kent?
I think that the fact that there are so many people here today, 40 years plus from when RNI was broadcasting, says it all. It really has made a massive impact on an awful lot of people. Also, I think it was, along with Veronica and Caroline, the last of the stations where people actually lived on the ships and actually broadcast, and I think that comes across very much as opposed to today, where it's very much a 9-to-5 job. You go in, you do your show, and you go home. This was a unique time in radio, and I think it was a great honour to have been part of it.
Like that, Roger. And Paul?
I agree, Roger. I think radio will never be the same again. And it is such a shame, because it was a great thing. But I think with what we did at RNI, you never got the feedback, because you were at sea for 3.5 weeks or whatever it was. But the thing was, if you listen to the internet now, most of the internet stations are trying to reproduce what we did in the late 70s or the middle 70s. It was terrific.
Wonderful thought. Rob?
May I mention two things? First of all, I think the name International was the key to our success, because and it was mentioned before that we had mail from across the world, not just Holland and from England or the UK. It was a truly international station, and I think that makes it distinct from all the other stations, including Caroline, which is obviously the most famous station. But I think RNI was totally distinct because it was a truly international station. The other thing it managed to do was to help to project the Dutch music scene, and that was very, very important. I worked with a lot of the Dutch bands at the time.
And we all own copies of Moving exactly. Waves and Storm and Thunder.
Yeah, well, even Focus, look at, and Golden Earring as well. They all did well because of the airplay that the radio station gave. So I think it's a twofold thing. Yeah. The international side of it, plus the fact that we helped Holland become, to break out of a shell at the time.
Thank you. Graham, briefly?
Well, I think for all the offshore stations I've had the pleasure to be associated with and worked with, They all had a special meaning for me, each and every one of them. But for comfort and coziness and working with colleagues at a time when I joined Radio North Sea, which was towards the last class of the team, it was to me a very happy and poignant, very happy time in my life.
Sounds like a happy family. And Vic, the final words from you.
Okay, I think the colorful ship was unique. The teams we had was unique. The sound was unique. And I have to thank you all in here that you still keep up the spirit of this time. Because I think it was a great time.
It was a great time. Can I ask you all to thank our panel? Yeah. And while they're taking the photographs, let's play clip number 39. Some final words from Erwin Meister. Thank you very much, everybody.
Liebe Freunde von Radio Nordsee International, die Stunde des Abschieds ist gekommen. In einem alten deutschen Volkslied heißt es unter anderem, ich wäre ja so gern noch geblieben, aber der Wagen, er rollt. Auch wir wären wirklich noch gern geblieben, aber bekanntlich hat die niederländische Regierung Rundfunksendungen von Bord außerhalb der nationalen Gewässer liegender Schiffe mit Wirkung vom 1. September 1974 für illegal erklärt. Und etwas Illegales zu tun, lag von jeher nicht in unserer Absicht. So bleibt uns also nichts anderes übrig, als dem Gesetz Genüge zu tun und die Sendungen von Radio Nordsee International nunmehr einzustellen. Auf Wiedersehen, auf Wiederhören. Dag vrienden, God bless you all.